Hello and welcome to Establish the Pools. I'm Peter Jennings, joined by Mark Dankenbring. Doing my best Adam Levitan impression, not the best, but excited to chat all things pools on this show. We're going to talk pick'em pools, Survivor, and of course, Underdog at the end. Reminder that this show is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. We will have best ball going on for the playoffs. We have all the different pick'em challenges that you can do. And of course, all that content is over at ETR. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good, Peter. It's been a chaotic couple days here. I'm in Cincy, my hometown, for a wedding this weekend, and was planning to stay with my parents, but got a text, yesterday morning. My mom's sick, my sister is sick, so kind of had to audible. And now at my in-laws right now, recording this show. So it's been a chaotic couple days. So excited to get back to the norm here, talk some football with you. Should be a fun week for pools. You can see on the screen here some big edges we have this week, some big ones, compared to the last couple of weeks. So excited to talk about it with you.
Yeah, super stoked. Last week I went 3-2 in the pick'ems. Needed Kansas City in that last game. Unfortunately, not only did they not cover, but they also won, which would have been, if they would have lost, would have been great for the DraftKings Survivor, which is we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, starting with the pick'em contest, we have huge edges based on kind of where the market is now. And of course that could change. I mean, the biggest one right now is the Vikings. This move is, based on Josh Allen. So we're watching what's happening to Josh Allen today. What's your sense on kind of his status and Josh Allen's outlook going forward?
Yeah, I think he'll miss. That's kind of what the Twitter and fantasy doctors are saying, that we can't necessarily get direct word from the Bills doctors, but did not practice Wednesday, Thursday, I believe, did not practice again today. Obviously, this line has shifted down. I think it even opened 7.5, on Monday, Tuesday, when the contest opened at 6.5. So now all the way down to 3.5. I would imagine that is fully baking in Case Keenum starting. So, I think it's an interesting week. We have that game and then also the Cardinals, which is close to a 20% edge. It's kind of one of those things, again, we've hit on this in past weeks, where if you're in a good position and, you're doing well, and I think taking the chalk here and going with the Vikings is fine. If you're playing from behind, obviously, a massive percentage of the pool is going to take the Vikings. I would imagine, 50, 60% on DraftKings, I would think, would be on the Vikings this week. So, you never know what's going to happen in a football game. I personally think I would probably take the Vikings here at 6.5, but the Bills are at home. They do have talented offensive players outside of Josh Allen, and also a talented defense, which is down a couple players. But, the Vikings, I think people are still mixed on them in the market, despite being 7-1. So, maybe even 8-1 now. How are you feeling about them this week?
Yeah, I mean, assuming Josh Allen doesn't play, I'm positioned quite well in the DraftKings pick'em pool, so I'll definitely eat that chalk on probably all the entrants. If you're in trouble, I think that's an interesting fade. I don't think you necessarily have to take the Bills, but you could just not take the Vikings and hope that the Bills cover and pick up ground that way. And if the Vikings do win, hopefully you can pick other winners. But if you're in a decent position, I think that's an obvious one, assuming Josh Allen doesn't play. The Cardinals game is more interesting to me because now we have Kyler Murray as a game time decision with a hamstring. And, you hear hamstring for someone like Kyler who relies so much on his athleticism. I certainly am concerned. And we still need the news on Stafford. It sounds like he's going to miss based on what the market's done. But it is concussion protocol. We'll see. I haven't seen anything today. I know he didn't practice yesterday. But that's a huge part of this line as well, as Matthew Stafford's health. I assume you're kind of just waiting on that as well, and kind of making the assumption based on the market that he's going to miss. Do you feel the same way about Stafford and Allen both missing?
Yeah, I think so. They're obviously West Coast team, so practice a little later in the day. I would imagine, we get word on him here in a couple hours. So, if he doesn't practice again today, you mentioned it though, concussion protocol is a little different. So he could get cleared Saturday morning or even Sunday, I believe. But, definitely not good. We definitely want to see him get a limited practice to think, he has a chance to play. But the Cardinals, as you mentioned with Kyler, could be down. They're already down multiple interior defense or offensive linemen, and going against Aaron Donald and the Rams. Their pass rush has been not very great this year. So, I'm interested to see if they can get after the Cardinals. And, we've seen McVay kind of own this matchup in the past. So this is definitely an interesting one. If both if both quarterbacks are out, I'm interested to see where this market goes, because I think now, Kyler got in a limited practice today. I would agree with you. It looks like the market is leaning towards Stafford out, Kyler in. In that circumstance, with Kyler playing, Stafford out, how do you feel about the Cardinals?
Yeah, I'll just ride the edge again. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
where it is now, it's just too much of a discrepancy. You'll have to take it. I don't feel great about the Cardinals, but I don't feel good about either of these teams, assuming kind of health. I think both teams have really struggled this year. Levitan's talked about, Cliff being a fake sharp. I certainly think that has shown itself to be true in a big way this year. Watch this
Yeah.
news, though. I mean, if you really want to get I'd feel better about taking the Rams than I would be about taking the Bills, assuming both quarterbacks are out and this kind of stays where it is, because I just think that there are ways the Rams can still win this game without
Mm-hmm.
good quarterback play, especially if Kyler is limited with his mobility. So I probably, I'm going to take the biggest edges with my stuff, just given where I'm positioned. But if I had to do something super contrarian trying to make up ground, I think I prefer the Rams over the Bills, but curious your thoughts.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of with you there. I definitely want to wait till Sunday morning to know about the quarterbacks. I agree. I prefer the Rams over the Bills if wanting to go contrarian here. It is interesting that this Cardinals game has only moved 2 points and is about the same edge as the Vikings, which has moved 3. And I think that's because it moved over the key number of 3.5 down to 3, and then to 1.5. So still, even though it's only moved 2 points, like a bigger edge, or about an equal edge there. And then the Cardinals, offense has been getting healthier outside of the offensive line. So with Rondale Hopkins there, they've still got some weapons, whereas the Rams, it's just been anemic all year. Can't block anyone. So, but I don't know. I still think I prefer the Rams, over the Bills if going contrarian there.
Yep. Colts has moved a lot, and we'll talk about the Raiders as a survivor pick. I think the Colts make a pretty good play here. The big news: Renfro, Waller, both to the IR. It's a lot of points against a pretty bad team. Obviously, the Colts have been anemic. One thing I'm watching is Jonathan Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much the biggest piece of news, I believe, on the Colts side. How are you thinking about this game? Because I know Deion Jackson was ruled out earlier. I'd love to see Matt Ryan come in as well. And the coaching change, too, is hard. The Colts have been so bad. I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but certainly a little bit more variance with this Colts team this week. And the Raiders, obviously, without 2 big weapons. They haven't been playing with Waller for the majority of the year already, but losing Renfro is significant in my mind.
Yeah, both teams have had crazy, personnel changes this week. The Raiders released, their starting safety Jonathan Abram this week, and then obviously lose Waller and Renfro to IR. And then the Colts side is, man, I think it's really hard to wrap your head around kind of what we could see here from the Colts. Obviously, with new head coach and Jeff Saturday, kind of the lean there is, he's going to establish the run and kind of go back to his roots as an offensive lineman and just run the ball. It looks like Jonathan Taylor is going to play. You mentioned Deion Jackson is out. So it's interesting. Jonathan Taylor has kind of been hampered by this high ankle sprain the last few weeks, obviously kind of been in and out of the lineup. So I think they're going to give him a lot of touches, but not sure on his effectiveness. And then, I'm surprised this number has moved down to 5. Do you think that's more player related? Do you think that's a Waller and Renfro case, or you think that's just kind of money coming in on the Colts because this line was a little too high at 6.5?
Yeah, I think it's more the latter there. Just probably a little too high, but yeah, we've seen a lot of other things. I just realized that Shaq Leonard has also been ruled out in the last hour.
Right.
So yeah, this is a tough one. It's just 2 teams that are kind of beat up, have underperformed relative to expectation, and you're looking at a lot of points. I'm definitely going to see where this closes. I don't have conviction on this game by any means.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually kind of excited to use the Raiders in Survivor potentially. I was at least thinking about it. So disappointed to see that, but I'll watch this line, and it's not something I have conviction on. Let's go through the kind of some of these other games. The Browns at Dolphins, 4.5 to 4 is definitely an edge. I think this Browns team, could be more disruptive. I love what the Dolphins are doing. We'll see. I don't have a strong read on this game. The Texans at Giants, actually really like the Texans here relative to the line. I thought the line made no sense. I know the Giants have a great record, but they're a slow paced team. I don't think they're that strong of a team. Certainly better than the Texans, but 6.5 points felt like way too many. And now we're at 4.5, which feels like the right line. So I think that edge will kind of stay where it is. And then, I bet the Chargers this week. I bet the Chargers minus 6.5. And then, I think the line, as we saw here, got to 7.5. So that would be an interesting hedge. And then outside of that, yeah, the Titans are fine, I guess. I don't have high conviction there, but I'm trying to sort through how I'm going to power rate these games in my mind. Of course, I'm going to follow the edge more than anything, but any of these games stick out as good or bad chalk based on the current edges?
Yeah, I'm definitely in on the Browns. I think just kind of their style of play, their offense has been so effective, and the Dolphins' defense continues to be banged up. And the Dolphins have been so effective and efficient on offense, but they really don't. They run at a pretty slow pace, so I don't think they're naturally going to pull away from a lot of teams. Even in their wins, they've had a lot of one-score wins. So I do like the Browns here on the road, coming off their bye. It doesn't look like, David Njoku was ruled out, so going to wait another week on him, but Wyatt Teller, one of their best offensive linemen, is playing. And obviously, when they have their offensive line in full force and Nick Chubb, I feel confident about the Browns, at least keeping this close, dictating the tempo of the game a little bit. So I do like the Browns there. The Texans, I'm interested to hear you say that because, I definitely don't have a great feel there with them. It looks like Brandon Cooks is going to play, but just some, a team I don't necessarily love kind of putting money on at this point, just because I'm not sure on their intentions to win games, but they do have kind of a mini bye since they played last Thursday. So the Giants coming off their bye, that edge is, neutered a little bit by the Texans having some extra time.
They played the Eagles well. That was kind of the thing that I was impressed with in that first half. I mean, they were tied after a half against, one of the best teams in the NFL. I worry to a degree about what you're saying, team staying, but at the end of the day, in the NFL especially, like, everyone out there is competing for future jobs. I mean, the shelf life and career duration for these NFL players is just so small. So I think people are going out and playing as hard as they can, and that goes for the coaching staff as well. So I think it was just too much for me at 6.5. I mean, the Giants have a great record, but they are not a good team. And the other reason that I think it's interesting, and just in general, the markets have gotten better at pricing this, but broadly, big underdogs and super low totals tend to be good bets. And the market has priced this a lot better. It's not an inefficiency that you can just like blindly bet, but in general, that's something I look to. And now that we've seen the line movement, I feel really good about just 6.5 points is a lot in a game that, is going to be very low scoring based on kind of what the market's telling us right now. We're seeing.
That's a great point with the total. I just pulled it up here. It's at 41.5 is the highest, 40.5 most spots. So that's a great call there. 6.5. With that low of a total, does make it more approachable.
Yeah. So I think that's a solid one. Certainly not as good as the top ones, but I'm with you on the Browns, and then trying to decipher the Chargers, Titans, Steelers. I mean, the Chargers are so beat up. I'm very bullish on the 49ers going forward. We've talked about that on other shows. I'm thinking about the 49ers as well for Survivor. So what are your thoughts on that? And then what we can talk. I mean, I guess I can transition us into Survivor as well.
Yeah, I did bet 49ers at minus 6.5. So I like them a bit more this week. Obviously, the 7.5 on the Chargers is enticing, to get that number, but you mentioned it. I just don't feel super confident in the Chargers being able to put up points here with how banged up their offense is. Their offensive line has also been a liability, and the 49ers are getting pretty much everyone back on offense and defense. They did lose Jason Verrett to that torn Achilles yesterday in practice, but their defensive line, outside of a couple guys, is fully healthy. Bosa's back. They got Trent Williams back on the offensive line. Like, Debo's going to be back. Kyle Juszczyk will be back. So I definitely feel confident about the 49ers winning this game, but 7.5 is a ton of points. I could see this potentially kind of be like a backdoor effort for the Chargers, but I don't know. I just don't have much faith in the Chargers offense to really compete here. I think the 49ers, could roll them pretty easily. I'm just worried about kind of them letting the foot off the gas and the Chargers getting in the back door. The Titans, I'm interested that has moved up to -3 as well. I kind of like the Broncos coming off the bye here. They've just been horrible at converting, red zone trips into touchdowns. So I think that's going to regress here a little bit. Greg Dulcich coming off the bye, Sutton and, Jerry Jeudy I'm hoping they have some more rapport here with Russ coming out of the bye. Obviously, you're a Denver fan. Are you feeling confident there, or what do you think about the Titans?
Yeah, I've been so impressed with the Titans coaching staff, and I mean, I just don't think the Broncos are that good, but
Yeah,
we'll see. I mean, off the
that's
bye,
a
maybe they get things from together, and losing Bradley Chubb, I think, is significant. Um,
yeah, that's a
going
good
back
note.
to yeah, that's a fine game. Going back to the
Yeah,
49ers quickly, though, I think the bye was about as helpful to them as any team that's had a bye. I mean, getting Christian McCaffrey even more acclimated to the offense. We saw what a weapon that he is, and I think he's one of the running backs that actually does really matter, as we saw 2 weeks ago when he threw, caught, and rushed for a touchdown. So I think Kyle Shanahan really knows Christian from growing up and knows how to leverage his skill set. He's a very creative play caller, and kind of the way he's used Debo and the running backs sets up extremely well. And I think they'll have some creative play calls for Christian. So that part's really good. The defense obviously got a lot healthier. It's unfortunate with the injury yesterday in practice, but Trent Williams came back, and now he has an extra week to get healthier and fully rested up. I just think they're a superior team, and that's the team that I want to bet on the rest of the year. So I really like San Francisco, and the Chargers are going the opposite direction. Sounds like Keenan's probably going to miss again. Mike Williams out. That's just a lot of weaponry that they won't have on offense. So I think it's a really good spot, and it's probably my lean for Survivor. Are
yeah.
you still left in any of the second chance, or are you doing any of the Survivor stuff?
Yeah, I have a couple teams alive, and I entered last week and made through like I think everyone. So I had to place since I'm in Cincy. They don't run the pools here, so I placed my picks before I left, and I did choose the 49ers, and I have 5 entries. I chose them in 3. So feeling solid about that. I will mention before we move to Survivor, I do like the Steelers here at +2.5 a little bit as kind of a smaller edge, but I just think it's kind of a perfect storm for them at home against the Saints. I like the Steelers to win that game, so that's probably one I'll take and pick them. But
Yeah.
do you want to transition to Survivor? We can talk
Yeah,
a bit
let's
more
just
about
look
that.
briefly at kind of the money lines. So if
Yeah.
you go there and then we go to the money line. So I think what's interesting this week, if you're left in some of these pools, the DraftKings one's down to like 306 or something like that.
Nice.
So I guess we can just talk about my position. I used the Eagles, which I felt great about. We remember we were talking about the Eagles on that Thursday night game. I was going to be happy over there, 30 to 40%. They were 21%.
Really? Wow.
So
That's
I felt
incredible.
really good about the Eagles there. So they're the biggest favorite on the board. They're the safest pick, but a lot of people have used the Eagles. So they're not going to be that heavily owned. It's not an option for me. The next option in terms of just money line pricing is the Chiefs. I still have the Chiefs left. 24% of the field used the Chiefs last week against the Titans. I think it's an interesting spot to use the Chiefs, and you certainly don't need to be saving your aces at this point in time. But at this, I am nervous about the Chiefs a little bit, given this Jacksonville team that I think is really starting to come on, specifically on offense. So I'm a little nervous about Kansas City in this spot. I think they'll definitely. I mean, I think the market's efficient here, but I do have some respect for Jacksonville, and I'd rather save Kansas City. I think specifically for Week 15 against Houston, where they're a 13.5 point favorite. So I really like San Francisco. I was considering Vegas as well, but now that line is moving against them, so that is concerning, and it would feel gross to go down with the Raiders. I
Yeah.
know people are thinking about Dallas as well. I think Dallas is a pretty poor pick, honestly. This is a spot where they're going on the road. I know Green Bay's been bad, but Aaron Rodgers is still at home. They have some good players, and maybe they can turn their season around a little bit. I'm not bullish on the Packers. We've been bearish on them all year, but it's not a spot I want to use Dallas. And I think it's a specifically bad spot because in Week 12, they get the Giants at home where they're an 8 point favorite. And then if you can save them, I think the ideal week to use them is going to be Week 14, where they're playing Houston at home. So they're a 13.5 point favorite there. So I think Dallas is really interesting. And then, Buffalo, you're not going to use this week. I still have
Right.
Buffalo. It's a big bummer that I have Buffalo. 10% of the field had Buffalo last week when they lost. That was the big loser from last week. But yeah, you're not going to be using Buffalo at this point. We'll see if Josh Allen can get back to being healthy and how this injury impacts him long term. And then Miami, I definitely don't want to use because I like Cleveland in the spot. Miami has a bye next week, and then they get Houston at home as well for week 12. So I'd really like to use Miami in week 12. I'd really like to use Dallas in week 14. So then it's like, okay, where am I going to go in week 11? That's the scary spot. Is week 11 looks really, really rough.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to kind of sort through what I want to do because week 11 is the tricky spot as I plan ahead. But I think I'll use San Francisco this week. They have a couple spots that are similar. They have New Orleans in week 12. They have Washington in week 16, which is a long time to wait. But I think this is as good a spot as any to use them. And then next week is really where it'll be tough to figure it out.
Yeah, love your analysis and breakdown there. We did get some numbers from Run Your Pool. Looks like the Chiefs will be the most popular team this week. They have them at around 33% picked at this point. Giants second at 16%. Bucks at 10%, which I thought was interesting. Playing over in Germany, they are about not great money line favorites here. Minus 150 we see at Superbook is the biggest. Let's look at kind of the sharper books. Yeah, Deck Prism has them at about minus 140, and just kind of everything going on with traveling to Germany and how ineffective they've been. Definitely don't love the Bucks this week. Agree with you on the Cowboys. I would think that's a bad play on the road at Green Bay. And you mentioned they have really strong matchups upcoming at home. I mean, I'm pretty much, I mentioned I used the 49ers for 3 of them, and then I actually used the Giants for my other 2. I feel pretty solid about them coming off the bye. They're definitely not the most talented team, but have a lot of faith in that coaching staff. They've just, done so well with so little there this year, I think. And having a couple weeks to game plan, I'm confident that they'll be able to come out and either feed Saquon or Wandale's back and fully healthy after the bye week. So I do like the Giants. The Raiders, again, that game is just, there's so much going on. It's hard for me to pin down. I think I'd feel pretty confident in choosing the Raiders though, if you had to, but I definitely lean Giants and then the 49ers probably as the 2 I'd pick this week. Any other kind of out in the dark or, shot in the dark takes, or pretty much going to go chalk with one of those guys?
I think I'm going to go chalk. I don't really see another spot that makes any sense. I mean, if you've used a lot of teams, it could get, it gets really interesting. I mean, I guess you could, people are going to probably take the Giants. You just mentioned. I don't think there's really anyone else to even consider. I mean,
right.
You're not going to take the Bears. You're not going to take the Bears. You're not going to take the Titans. The Titans actually have a couple spots that you could use them. Again, they have Houston in week 16 as well. So,
looking at the board, I could see people trying to get cute with the Bears. People seem really confident in them at this point in time, and Justin Fields obviously exploding, and they get the Lions. It's kind of the perfect storm that I think, we could see them get up maybe like 10% in DraftKings because, I doubt anyone has used them yet.
And you're not going to use them again. They're a dog in every game going forward.
Yeah. So that I could see that kind of being one that gets steamed a little bit, but I think in agreement there, there's some good options. And you mentioned week 11, you're sharp and looking ahead and, playing it out. That's obviously the best way to go here. So, if you can kind of game plan, use one of your teams and game plan around the next few weeks and feel good about this week, I think that's the best way to approach it.
Yeah, the big problem is next week where everyone's going to use Baltimore. It looks like, which is what I would end up doing if I am able to advance. That's like really the only big favorite, but that'll be super chalk. So that'll be an interesting. They're a 13-point favorite
against Carolina. It looks like
against Carolina,
yeah,
and then everyone else is like pretty marginal outside of Philly. So if people say Philly for in Indianapolis, that's something to worthwhile. But it's a really, really gross week in week 11 where I could see like 60-70% of people using Baltimore.
And they have, I think, like the softest remaining schedule in the league. So figuring out someone else to use besides them could be sharp for, just going down the stretch.
Yeah, they have Atlanta, Denver, and Pittsburgh all at the end. So we'll see. Well, that'll be an interesting debate for next week. Let's close up the show with doing something from Underdog. Let's do a pick. Do you have 2 picks by chance that you can make, or
I've got 2. I've got two.
Okay.
We can
Why
talk
don't
about
you
it
go
too
ahead?
if you prepared as well, or if
Yeah,
you got
I've
a
looked at a
couple.
couple things. I just want to double check the lines. I looked earlier today, and I'm just going to make sure some of the stuff that I have is still there. So go ahead with yours, and then I'll give my underdog pick'ems as well.
Cool. So first one I'll go with here. I'm going to take an over here first. And this one we actually took for an official ETR prop, but it's moved up a little bit, but I'm going to go with Chase Claypool over 36 and a half receiving yards. So this one we project like low to mid 40s here for Claypool. The line we took officially was 28 and a half. So it has moved up a bit. So I feel a little bad chasing this, but I just think it's a great bet because the Bears, Claypool was lined up outside on 15 of 17 of his snaps last week. I would imagine he gets up to close to a full, snap allotment. They fed him 6 targets on those 17 snaps. So, they're clearly trying to incorporate him into the offense. I mentioned they used him outside where Pittsburgh was using him more in the big slot role. So I think his ADOT is going to increase here. So I honestly think he could get over this 36 and a half number with just 2 or 3 catches. And you see his line here at 3 receptions. So I'm going to go with the yards here. They're playing the Lions, which has been a horrible pass defense all year. So I just think this line is still too low. So I'm going to go higher on Claypool.
Oh, I like the Claypool call. I need Claypool big time for the rest of the year. I have a lot of him in best ball. Well, what's your next pick? I'm just double checking one more price here real
Cool.
quick.
Yeah. And then the next one is going to be from the Raiders. We remember Hunter Renfrow out there, and Waller's absence, Foster Moreau has had an amazing role. He led the team in routes the last 2 weeks, has close to a 22% target share in his 3 starts the past 3 weeks. And then without Waller and Renfrow there in the middle of the field, I think you get some looks. So let's see. I'm going to take his receptions line. We show an over on his receptions and his yards. I prefer the receptions here. His yards per catch has been down a little bit this year. So I think he's going to get, plenty of targets. I mentioned up above 20% so far in his starts this year. So I'm going to go over 3.5 catches for Foster Moreau.
Okay. I like that. All right. I guess, gosh, I don't know if I want to do this. I'm gonna go under 51 and a half receiving yards for TJ Hawkinson.
Okay.
That's the one that I was looking at. I was hoping to get a little bit better number. That market started to move a little bit, but yeah, it's just one of those situations where I know he's getting acclimated and they're really accelerating things. But if Josh Allen doesn't play and Buffalo tries to run the football a lot, I could just see a slower paced game than kind of what the market's currently expected. We've seen the total obviously come down in this game with the expectation that Josh Allen's going to sit. So to me, I think a lot of the props are still kind of pricing in the baseline for both of these teams. And I could just see the Bills go from passing a ton to running a ton.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not ideal for this Minnesota team. And also bet just a little bit on the uncertainty around, what Hawkinson's role is going to be in Minnesota. I think long-term it definitely will be, but it's still the second week there. And 51 and a half is I was hoping for like a 54, 55 and a half, but 51 and a half is still decent. I think, it's closer to what we have. I don't know what you guys have at ETR. If you can pull up his exact.
Yeah, let me check. I'll check real quick.
Which is a better price.
Yeah, we're under that. We're right at like 47 yards. So,
and that's the main projection.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, so then it's great based on your guys' stuff too. That makes me feel better.
Definitely. And we have him with a 20% target share. So his role was really great in his first game there. So I was interested to see that. But honestly, we have a 20% target share in him for 47 yards. So that one seems pretty solid to me for sure.
Great. Okay. Well, hopefully that wins. It'd be great for that to ship. Mark, any closing thoughts before we get out of here?
Not really. I'm just excited for another week of football here, halfway through the season, which is pretty crazy. It's flown by. So just looking to enjoy another weekend of football.
Awesome. Well, enjoy the wedding. Good luck to everyone out there. Adam, I believe, will be back next week. And hope you guys have some winners in DFS, bets, and your pools. Good luck.